Well, this does not look good, boys. So, as you can see, we've definitely had some issues. Let's talk about how we got to this point and why the motor is out of the car and what we're going to do next. I guess let's start from the beginning. So I'm cruising along, leading the pack, merging onto, our favorite Mexico freeways. And, I kicked the tires in first gear to get some heat in them. And as soon as I did that, around 5-6K, I felt this kind of shudder and a little bit of hesitation. And immediately I start hearing some nasty puttering noises coming from the passenger side bank. So I'm like, all right, I immediately, look down at the engine vitals, which I always have up, in the SRT apps. And, everything's all good. Oil pressure's good. Coolant temperature's good. Oil temperature, everything. So I was kind of, I scratched my head for a second. And, just for context, for the past 2 months, I was battling some exhaust leak issues on the Bellinger in the merge collector and mid-pipe area. So they'd been leaking and giving me a nasty fuel smell in the cabin, which was pissing me off pretty good. And Viper Exchange had tried multiple times to remedy the issue, and we were kind of getting almost close to the point where I was like, all right, do I need to buy some new headers here? So the latest efforts on their part being, making some custom gaskets in that area. I've since fixed that issue, and I'll tell you guys in a different post how I did that. But so initially, the point is, when all this occurred, I was kind of biased to believe that I'd blown those gaskets out or that I'd blew a header gasket. But that being said, even at low RPM, as soon as this happened at part throttle, the car felt immediately kind of down on power and felt rough. So I pull over on the side of the road. All the guys kind of blow by me and keep on going. Again, look at the vitals, oil pressure's good, temperature good, no check engine lights. I get out of the car, pop the hood, and try to, listen to the motor and listen, especially in the passenger side bank. And I for sure had a really nasty exhaust leak. I mean, I could hear it puttering. Then, I'm trying to kind of listen a little bit further, and I thought I could hear some valve train noise in the passenger head. But, I mean, you guys, just imagine trying to diagnose noises on the side of the freeway, tucked up against a concrete barrier, the cams chopping, side pipes firing right into the barrier, amplifying the noise. I mean, you can't hear anything. So I couldn't make a real accurate diagnosis, if you will. So I decided, after checking the engine vitals again, not seeing any loss of oil pressure or, anything catastrophic there, I decided to limp the car home. I figured, like, if I lost a lifter, or cracked a valve spring or something, it wouldn't be the end of the world. And I was still kind of hoping foolishly that it's just probably a nasty exhaust leak. Now, to be honest, if it was any other car, I would have towed the car home just as a precaution. Period. The thing with the Viper is I just don't trust anybody to tow that thing. It's low as hell. The splitters, the diffuser, you know, it's just, I just feel uncomfortable. And I've had so many issues with tow trucks in the past, and so have my friends, and things get damaged. And, you know, everything on the car is all original. I always worry that, well, fuck, if somebody tears something up, yeah, it's not the end of the world. It can be repaired, but it will no longer be original. And I know it's kind of silly, but that means something to me. So that kind of weighed in on my decision to actually drive the car home. So in hindsight, don't know if that was exactly the right decision, but, you know, it's what I committed to in the moment. So on the drive home, I started to kind of understand that, you know, it wasn't just an exhaust leak. You know, I was feeding the car part throttle at low RPM, and I just felt like I was down a cylinder. Like the car just felt kind of rough. And then I started to hear backfiring out of the right bank. You know, I'd be driving wrong and, you know, let off throttle and boom, you just hear this gunshot backfire, and then boom again. And every couple of miles you'd get that. So I started figuring out pretty quickly that I'd probably lost an intake valve, either due to a rocker arm, you know, a lifter, a spring, something. And one of the cylinders was just loading up with fuel unburnt, and it was just dumping itself out into the primaries and exploding. So I get home, you know, I park the car in the garage. It's finally quiet, and, you know, pop the hood, and then I could really hear the valve train. And I could also see some light smoke from the passenger bank, fuel smoke. You know, it wasn't oil or anything, just black. So I kind of, you know, I actually felt pretty good at that point, because I was like, look, this is a simple valve train issue, no big deal. You know, yeah, it's an inconvenience. I'd have to take the thing back to VE and, you know, tear the top end off and fix it, but no biggie. And actually, if you followed any of my threads on the Viper forums, you know that I've had 2 valve train failures on the car very early in ownership already. Both instances are, you know, rare failures on Vipers, but, you know, I guess I'm the lucky type. The first, you know, the car was pretty much stock. I had a lifter failure, just clogged with debris. The lifter collapsed, wouldn't pump up. No big deal. You know, we tore the top end off. We put a new lifter in, just went about our business. The second one was a weird failure. We had on the rocker arm, one of the trunnion caps on the rocker arm cracked, and it spilled the needle bearings into the motor. So, you know, we, believe it or not, we're able to fish out all of the needle bearings out of the motor, out of the oil pan, out of the valley, replace the rocker arm, you know, change the oil in the car, put everything back together, inspected everything, and no issues. And I ran the car for 3+ years after that with absolutely no issues. So the first 2 valve train failures I had were no biggie. So I was hoping that it would be the same thing here. To do some real troubleshooting, I decided to get the car towed over to Viper Exchange the following morning. And I had a buddy come by with a trailer, and we loaded the Snake up. And no, the irony of the Ford V10 pulling the Dodge V10 isn't lost on me here. So haha, fuck off. It's actually a badass little pedo van. It's an old Budweiser delivery truck that's been repurposed as a camper hauler for my buddy's SCCA race car. So big thanks to him for helping me out. So we towed the thing over to Viper Exchange, dropped the car off, and at this point I was pretty much convinced that, you know, we had either had a lifter fail again, a valve spring, or another rocker arm. So I wasn't really too concerned. So the car sat at VE for about a week or so while they tied up some other projects, and, you know, finally they had time to take a look, take a peek, if you will, into the heart of the beast. So initially everything went as expected. You know, they pulled the plugs, they pulled the valve cover, and you can see, you know, a wet overfueled plug on the number 5 cylinder. And rockers, springs, push rods were fine, but there was play in the rocker. So we knew we had lost a lifter. So exactly as I suspected, we had a bad lifter I'd be back on the road soon. I was super, super happy. So we decided to, to go ahead, get the heads off, pull all the lifters out. Hopefully we didn't have any cam damage. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Back on the road by the weekend. I even went as far at the time as making some, meme posts on social media saying, ha, 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 all's well. Back to our regular scheduled programming momentarily. But, of course, the minute you open your big mouth and you say shit like, oh, no big deal, it's exactly as I thought, everything's fixed, everything's all good, you end up with a foot in your mouth. So that's precisely what happened in this situation. As soon as we pulled the head off, that lifter that had failed wouldn't budge, which meant that it was likely egged or mushroomed in the bore, and it also meant that we most likely had some material transfer onto the cam or a wiped lobe, which means the cam was gone. So yeah, things weren't looking good. So then we pulled the oil pan, and shit started to escalate fairly quickly from there. As soon as we pulled the pan and looked and saw what was in there, I knew I was in for a new motor at that point. So with that, we pulled the transmission out, followed by the motor, which is kind of where we started the video, and then we began the teardown. So I will talk about the teardown and show you guys the carnage in the next video. Stay tuned.